Alrighty, welcome to episode 3 of the e-commerce marketing and optimization podcast. In this episode, I talked with Sean from Visible HQ. This is an episode we recorded a little while ago for his podcast, and we're talking SEO for e-commerce websites, which is quite different to SEO for a traditional small business website or a business that's not in the online retail space. So we discuss a whole bunch of stuff in this episode. We talk about how I got started in SEO, some of the big differences between regular standard SEO versus e-commerce SEO. I share the video SEO strategy that we use that will get a lot more mileage out of your videos and is an easy way to get high quality backlinks. And I share a whole bunch of small on-page SEO tweaks, tactics, and changes you can make to your website that will get you ranking higher in the search results and will get you better quality traffic, more qualified traffic, people who are more likely to hit the buy button and complete the checkout. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Full show notes, links, and everything else for the episode are over at the Pareto e-commerce website. So I hope you enjoy this one.
You're listening to the E-commerce Marketing and Optimization Podcast, the show where we help you grow your 6-figure e-commerce business to 7 figures and 7-figure e-commerce business to 8 figures and beyond. If you want to learn more about how we can help you in your business, go to ParetoEcommerce.com.
Brandon, welcome. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks, mate. Good to be on.
Let's start with you telling us just a bit about yourself and your experience with SEO.
Wow, I guess I probably first came into contact with SEO 10 years ago, maybe 2003. Myself and my business partner at the time took over an online store, and to keep the story short, when we took it over, it was doing about 100 grand a year revenue, and then in the first year we grew it to $1 million in revenue, and then the second year took that to $6.5 million. It's a very long story, but ultimately we were young and didn't know enough about business and ended up running out of cash, and the business ultimately went bust. I mean, it was a good lesson learned about uncontrolled growth, but from that I fell into doing SEO consulting because somewhere along the line running the online store, I realized if I changed certain things on the page, then our Google ranking would go up. I didn't even know what SEO meant at the time. But then about 2008, so all that fell apart in 2007, I think. And then 2008, I started getting a lot of calls from friends who owned web agencies at the time asking about SEO and that sort of thing, and kind of fell into doing SEO consulting, and then over time expanded to doing AdWords and websites and all sorts of stuff. So now my main business is the search engine shop, in the process of splitting out a lot of the e-commerce stuff we do. So we do a lot of e-commerce consulting and e-commerce traffic generation, and splitting that into a new business called Pareto e-commerce. So that's my background in a nutshell, I guess.
All right, cool, man. So today we're going to be talking about e-commerce SEO, SEO for e-commerce. What's the biggest difference between, say, doing link building for like an information site or a service-based site versus a site with products for sale?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how many products you have for sale, but I guess when you look at an e-commerce site, say a website has 50 or 100 products, each of those products is probably going to have a different set of target keywords. So in terms of the main difference, there's a lot more detail work when it comes to e-commerce, and there's a lot more things to track and balls up in the air. And effectively, one thing we talk about when we work with clients is that really every page on the website can only really be targeted at one keyword or one search phrase. So you really need to do, if you have 100 products, you're going to have to do separate SEO, almost all of those products, to get them to rank well. So I guess it's just really the detail work and the amount of things that you need to track with an online store, which would be the main difference.
Okay. So, let's get into that a bit. Like, say you've got a couple different classes of products. What kind of tactics, what's your game plan for approaching that? Like, I assume that on-page matters a huge amount for e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. And even more so now with some of the recent updates where, one problem that e-commerce sites typically have is a lot of thin content. We see, businesses are doing 6 and 7 figures online, and then you look at the product pages and they've got one line of text as the description, and you fatten that out to a few paragraphs and all of a sudden the traffic doubles. So, in terms of the targeting, you've really got 3 different classes of pages. You've got like the home page, or, the main top layer pages, which you target at more kind of head terms. Then you've got the category pages, which, you target the kind of the mid-tail terms, and then the individual product pages, which are really long tail terms and very specific keywords. So, yeah, there's a lot more. It's not just I want to rank for these two keywords. There's really a whole range of keywords that you need to be targeting and be aware of with the on-page stuff.
Okay. What about the off-page link building side of things? What's the best strategy for getting links if you've got a store? Like, is it targeting social media or trying for long tail phrases, via Reddit or some other parasite type of site?
Yeah, it depends on what the product is. One strategy that has worked really well for a lot of our clients is using video. So if you have video for each of your products, putting those, making sure that those videos link back to the individual product pages, and also putting those videos out on all the video property sites. So, don't just do YouTube, do Vimeo, Facebook, and Metacafe, and Dailymotion, and all these other type of sites. And that's a really good strategy to get more backlinks, because you get decent quality links from those, top tier video sites themselves. But then there's all these feeder sites and scraper sites that go in and grab those videos and stick them on their own site. So over time, it seems to be a good way to get a lot of kind of backlink volume, not necessarily quality backlinks, but you'll get a lot of volume doing it that way. One other thing that almost nobody thinks about as well is that products change on an e-commerce website all the time. So when a product page goes offline, when the product's finished or you're out of stock or you're not going to sell it anymore, if you don't 301 redirect that URL back to the parent category or another product, then all those links are dead. So one thing, particularly when we pick up a client that has an established site, is go through, just even jump into Webmaster Tools, and often you'll see hundreds of broken links that you can just go and repoint to the parent category or whatever the relevant page is, and all of a sudden they get this backlink juice back. It's a really easy win, and almost no one, I've rarely seen it talked about online.
I never heard of that. That seems really smart, though. I feel like everyone should be doing that.
Yeah, really easy win. Some e-commerce systems will do it by default, but most don't. So yeah, it's a really easy way to pick up those backlinks that, people will have linked to the product at some point, and, if the page is 404, then they're gone.
So are there any other types of link building you'll target for these e-commerce sites aside from the videos?
Price engines is a good one. There's two free price engines we use for clients, thefind.com and shopwiki.com. There are some kind of sneaky things you can do with RSS feeds, depending on what CMS you're on, taking RSS feeds that contain the products and pushing those out to other sites as well. Those are kind of a good way to get a lot of more volume versus quality links, but they seem to work really well. If the site is old and established and has a lot of authority, just the volume of links and using those kind of gray area strategies does seem to work pretty well.
Okay. You talked about how people should be 301ing old product pages. What are some other big mistakes that you see overlooked for e-commerce sites?
So we talked about, short content on the page is a real killer. Really, the product pages should stand alone as their own sales page nearly. So adding, shipping information, payment information onto the product pages themselves can be an easy way to fatten out the content, and will also generally help with conversion, because, a lot of people don't realize that the product page itself might be the landing page. Two other big wins as well, in the title tags for all the product pages, just adding the words buy and online to the title tags can be an easy way to get a 20, 30, 50% increase in traffic. And the reason being that adding just those two words in the title tags targets more of the long tail search terms that have high buying intent. So a lot of people will type buy product online into Google. So just by having those in the title tags, it's just an easy way to bump your rank and get more of those buying term searchers. And the other one is meta descriptions. We see a huge number of e-commerce sites with no meta description set for the products. So, just by going through and writing a half decent meta description, or a meta description that isn't too long, can be a really easy way to boost click-through rate without even having to care about rank or even focus on rank. So those would be, when we take on a new client, just taking care of those, that the length of description, titles and meta descriptions can easily, in some cases, double traffic or double sales. So Absolute no-brainers, but like a lot of fundamental stuff just kind of gets ignored or forgotten about.
Right. So with meta tags or meta descriptions, do you have a sort of plan, like, you try and hit this many characters, or you try and hit the keyword in the beginning versus the end? Any kind of plan for that?
It depends on how many products. Like if you have 10,000 products, you obviously can't handwrite, or you can, but it's going to take a lot of time. So it depends on whether we're going to handwrite them or we're going to use templates. So if there's a lot of products, then we have to use a template. So typically we'll say something about the product. The template will be something like blah, blah, blah product available for sale online with free, fast, insured nationwide shipping, something along those lines. And if they have a phone number, or if the phone number is relevant to that product, or if if it's a high dollar item product, including the phone number and the meta description is a good way to increase the click-through rate, because it just shows, it legitimizes the business and builds a lot of trust. If it was a site with 30 products or 50 products, we'd absolutely handwrite them, and we'd craft them all to use as much of, not too long, so we're not getting cut off, but not too short, so we're wasting space. So again, we'd have something, a lot of people, when they write the meta descriptions, they're trying to sell the product in the search results as opposed to just focusing on getting the click. So we just try and really promote the benefits of the store. If it's, if there's free shipping, absolutely include that. Normally we say insured shipping, because in most countries, if you ship something to someone legally and that gets lost, legally as the e-commerce website, the business, you're obligated to replace that. So in effect, you're offering shipping anyway. So we say that's insured and fast. These kind of little benefits that the competitors might not necessarily be using is an easy way to get the click over someone else. So a lot of the time we look at the competition and the meta descriptions they have and see what the benefits they are kind of promoting in the SERPs or through their meta description, and then write ours based on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's a really smart way to do it. Just looking at what works for your competitors and focusing on the benefits versus just, like you said, trying to sell the product in 160 characters or less.
Yeah. Another easy win is getting the rich snippets, so e-commerce rich snippets. So having the product price, having the in-stock, out-of-stock, and also having the reviews. So if you can automate the review requests, so normally with our clients, we will set up, if their platform supports it, we set up an automated email to go out usually 20 days after the product is shipped. And in that email, we actually ask them, has the product arrived, and ask them to put a review on the site. And then, by having the rich snippets show up and getting the reviews, so long as they're good reviews, we get the star rating in the search results. And if that's 4 or 5 stars and your competitor has no stars, that really attracts the eye. So that's going to increase the click-through rate as well.
Right, that makes sense. So without getting into it too much, what's a good resource for someone looking to add the rich snippets to their site?
If you're using a cloud provider, I'd say just email their support. So, most cloud, like BigCommerce, Shopify, all the big ones, Volusion, they'll support the rich snippets out of the box, but often you have to update the template, the product page template, just to insert the code. And often they change, if you go searching their help desk, they'll have articles that are years out of date. So it's just easier. That's the first thing we do, is just send an email. If we don't know how to do it, if it's not something we're familiar with, we'll just send an email to support, and they'll often come back and just give you the code snippet you need to insert. So nice and easy.
Right on. How about site speed? How important is that to an e-commerce site? I know it's important in general for ranking, but does it matter specifically on a site like that?
Yes, I've got a big issue with, there's a lot of talk about site speed online and around the net, and I've got a big issue with the way it's promoted sometimes, often by people who have an interest in site speed. Yes, it's absolutely critical, but the difference you get from taking your site speed or page load speed from 10 seconds down to 5 seconds is going to be very different to getting it from 2 seconds down to 1 second. So as a general guideline, when we work with clients, if it's 3 to 5 seconds, that's okay. If it's, up to 1 second, that's awesome. And if it's 1 to 3 seconds, that's pretty good. But, anything that's over 5 seconds probably needs attention. And there's easy ways to fix that. Using Cloudflare is a really quick and easy win, moving your DNS over there. But you need to be aware that if you're using your own SSL certificate, Cloudflare can break that. And then most CMSs now have content delivery network built in as a feature. So just turning that on. Often if you've been on there for a long time, you won't have that setting turned on. So I think it's very important, but it's not, if you're down at the few seconds load time, spending days and days tweaking things and getting 100 score on the Google page speed test is probably not the best use of your time.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I want to look at 2 different scenarios and just get your take on it. So
sure.
The first, let's say I've got a store where I'm ranking on page 2 or 3 for some of my most important products, versus I've got a brand new e-commerce store that I'm just starting to build. What sort of approach would you take for each one and just getting the next big win, I guess?
For any store, I would say if you're not running Google product listing ads, that is the very first thing you should be doing. Yes, they're paid, so they're going to cost money, but they're still, in terms of time versus return, in most cases we're seeing the product listing ads, people paying up to $1 a click. And usually the people who click on those ads, they're very much at the end of the sales process, so they're ready to buy. So in both cases, that would be the first thing we look at. As a second step, if it's an existing site that already has those running, making sure that there's no errors in the Merchant Center console, because often they'll have products that are broken or they're not approved. And then again, fattening out the descriptions, because there is, the Google product listing ads are kind of paid inclusion. So they still rely on a lot of SEO factors. So making sure you've got a nice big fat product description is a good way to rank high or get more impressions with those product listing ads. It's kind of half paid search, it's kind of half SEO, but that would be, the first thing we look at for both of those.
Okay, right on. Are there any other things you want to say about doing SEO for e-commerce sites before we're done here? Anything we didn't cover that you think is just a thing people really need to know? Probably
the one thing that for all our SEO clients, whether they're e-commerce or not, is the quickest win we have or the quickest tool we have is going into Google and just doing a search for all pages on their domain. So we just type into Google site : whatever the domain is, and that'll return all the pages that Google has indexed about the site. And you can immediately see where the problems are or where the easy wins are, whether there's too many pages indexed. If you've got 50 pages on the website and Google's indexed 2,000, then there's some sort of canonical issue. You'll immediately see what the title tags and the page titles are for the site. On the flip side, if you've got hundreds of pages on the site and there's only 2 indexed in Google, then there's some sort of indexation issue. So that would be the quickest and easiest win out of anything we'd ever do for SEO clients, because it will show if 10 or 20 different issues in one simple search.
Right on, man. That's really good advice. Before we go, do you want to throw out how people can get in touch with you if they have any follow-up questions or if they want to check out your e-commerce product you've got going on?
Just head over to paretoecommerce.com or check me out on Twitter @Tullibo, Tullibo.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Marketing and Optimization Podcast. If you want the latest e-commerce tips, tactics, and strategies, make sure to join our mailing list at paretoecommerce.com.